Give me a second on that one, that's a good question. Getting the Kitemarks improved our service in dealing with vulnerable consumers. The staff guidance we had around suicidal conversations, we had some, but it wasn't very good. Without the improved staff training and guidance, I dread to think what would have happened. What would I say to companies thinking about getting the Kitemark? I'd say go for it. The Consumer Council for Northern Ireland, we're the statutory consumer body for Northern Ireland. We cover a whole range of areas, so we cover energy, that's electricity and gas, water, post, transport. We do work on food poverty and food accessibility. We do work on financial services. We look at emerging market issues around EU exit. So a broad remit that gives us a unique perspective on consumers' lives in Northern Ireland and the difficulties that they're facing and what we can do as an organisation to help meet those difficulties and increase protections. We first started looking at the Kitemark for inclusive services and consumer vulnerability around 2019. We were doing some work with the regulators in Northern Ireland to look at the level of protection consumers had. And we thought that there were some gaps in Northern Ireland compared to Great Britain. And one of the things when doing that work that came up was the Kitemark, the British Standard Kitemark. And it seemed to us to just be a really good guidebook to say, well, if we do all of this, we know we're doing the right thing. So we looked at that. We, as an organisation, thought we should get the Kitemark to make sure that we're as good as we can be, and then it would also help us then with our conversations with service providers and regulators to say, really, we're practicing what we preach, and we would advocate that you go for it as well. We were looking to make sure that our services were as good as they could be at the Consumer Council. We work directly with consumers across a whole wide range of sectors that we cover for Northern Ireland. And we wanted to make sure that we were doing the best that we could. When we were looking at what standards we should set for ourselves as a company, we were looking at lots of different providers, but what drew our eye to the British Standards Institute was the Kitemark and the fact that it's just recognised. We obviously did our background research on do people trust the Kitemark, what does it mean to different people, and to us it just gave us the confidence of knowing that if we had that Kitemark, it's easily understandable by people that we're marrying up to a certain standard than some of the other sort of corporate identities that you could associate yourselves with. We had confidence in the Kitemark. We knew that our consumers would have confidence in the Kitemark, and then we could have confidence going to other organisations to say this is the one that you want. Having the standard has changed our approach and improved our approach in a couple of ways. So internally as an organisation, how we work, it's improved the training that we provide to staff, it's improved the guidance that we have for staff when they're talking to consumers, it's improved our referral processes, so we now have a wider set of links with other organisations so we can refer to them. And then externally, it's improved how we work with other organisations, so with service providers and regulators that we work with and government on a day-to-day basis, simply by saying we've got this standard, we think you should also have the standard, and we can then have a conversation with them about us practicing what we preach and also what the standards involved and the challenges involved in it, but the benefits far outweigh those challenges. We had an event in Belfast with BSI a few weeks ago, and one of the questions during the event was around suicidal conversations. Working to the standard for the Kitemark, we identified that the staff guidance we had around suicidal conversations, we had some, but it wasn't very good. So we wanted to improve that. So we worked with a local suicide prevention charity in Northern Ireland to improve staff guidance. We put in place a bespoke staff training course, and we also put together a training video and that staff can go on and have a look at. It's 4 or 5 minutes long, and it just refreshes those key points about what to do and importantly what not to do. And our staff they're not trained therapists, they're not counsellors, but they can provide a certain amount of support. We received a call from a consumer who was in acute need, acute distress. Suicide was mentioned, and because of the guidance, our staff member was able to implement the steps that we put in place to make sure that the support was the right thing to do. And we were able to get the emergency services round to that person with the information that we gathered. We got some feedback that that person had been put into, had received the medical attention that they needed. I think that's as much as I can say. Without the improved staff training and guidance, I'm not too convinced we'd maybe get to that point. I dread to think what would have happened, but it's certainly very helpful for us to have that improved guidance. The need for that was identified through the Kitemark. I think it might have taken us longer to realise that we had that need to improve our sort of support for staff and what they can do. And I suppose I should say as well that obviously looking after our staff as well, after they've dealt with a horrible conversation like that, we've got that support as well, sort of within the organisation to make sure that the staff member gets the help that they might need as well. For organisations considering the Kitemark, I'd say go for it. I'd recommend looking at the Kitemark, get the guidance, implement the guidance, and then go for the Kitemark. We've benefited from it as an organisation. More importantly, we know that the services we now provide to consumers are better, and we have confidence that that Kitemark, when consumers look on our website, look on our literature and see the Kitemark, that they've got confidence that we're meeting a sort of an internationally recognised standard of delivering a high level of service.